Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's English file lesson. My name is Karabo CD. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Grade 12 learners, if you want to get in touch with us, WhatsApp us on this number 064 748 8913. The focus of our lesson this afternoon is poetry. The first thing that you need to realize, grade 12 learners, when we sit for an English file, literature paper, or paper 2 is to do the following. The paper will be about 26 pages long. Our advice to you is do not attempt to read the entire question paper. The question paper consists of 4 sections. Only 4 sections. Plus or minus 26 pages. The instruction is do not read the entire paper. Answer questions from 2 sections you have studied this year. How much time do you have? We have 2.5 hours to write the English file paper 2. Now that you are writing or you are answering on 2 sections, you only need 75 minutes for each section. And each section is 35 marks. The focus of our lesson today is section D. This comes at the end or the back of the question paper, and we call it question 6. How many marks do you need here? You are answering for 35 marks, and you are dealing with what? With section D, poetry. What you are required to do is you answer the question on both poems. You cannot select. In 2010, you have studied how many poems? 10. How many? Yes, 10 poems. But you are only going to be tested on how many? On 2. So in section D, 1 poem will be 6.1. That's your first poem with either 17 marks or 18 marks. Then you proceed to write the second poem or answer on the second poem, which is going to be either 18 or it's going to be 17. So 17 plus 18 will be 35, or 18 plus 17 will be 35. Again, let's touch on the format. The format of the question paper is, in this section, you are answering on the following poems. Our poem of choice this afternoon is what? What Life is Really Like, written by Beverly Rycroft. If we had time, we will also do Hard to Find. But I'm giving you an example of the format, what you will see when you open the question paper. There will be a note instructing you to answer the questions set on both poems, question 6.1 as well as question 6.2. further instruction given to you is read the poem carefully. You are not just reading, but you read the poem carefully and then answer the questions which follow. Important to note, the number of marks allocated to each question serve as a guide to the expected length of your answer. If you have 1 mark, you're going to write very little. You're either going to have 1 sentence or a word if they ask you to provide a word. If you see 2 marks, normally you will explain and then you will give a point and followed by an explanation for you to earn the 2 marks. So the length, the marks determine the length of your response. What is poetry? Poetry is a special way of using words. How and why do you use such words? To express feelings, ideas, and even tell a story in a poem. You use words in a special way. You know, a poem is not a narrative like a short story or a drama, but it has its special form. It is different from regular writing because it often uses what? Rhythm, like a song, and uses creative language to paint pictures in your mind. We have the rhythm there, like we sing songs. So that will be poetry for you. Remember the lullabies that you used to do when you were still very small. So this time, we do not only read and see the rhythm, but we study the special way of using words. Furthermore, what do we concentrate on? We concentrate on the rhythm and the meter and the imagery. Remember what I said about mental vision, mental pictures. You create mental pictures. And then, of course, poetry has to do with what? With sound and language that is used creatively. With rhythm and meter, there's always the beat or the flow. You know a lot about beats, isn't it? Mama will buy me a mockingbird. You remember who wrote the song? Eminem, of course. So can you see the beat there, the rhythm there? I know you love music and you also have a beat going on in your head. So with poetry, for you to enjoy poetry, you look at the music and this time the words are playing where? In your mind. There's a flow, there's a beat, like the rhythm in music. Let's look at the example. What life is really like. The rhythm is created by natural flow of lines. For instance, life is not a fairy tale, it's a battlefield. There's a straightforward conversational rhythm that emphasizes the poem's message. Conversational, meaning talking to each other like we have a simple conversation. Life is not a fairy tale. Life is a battlefield where people fight. So it's like a conversation. What is the meter? It's a pattern of beats in the poem, like a dance routine. You used to dance routines, isn't it? The beats and the beats you I know as South Africans we love everything that we read about, we immediately give a beat to that. And then we create music. That's how fun and how creative we are as South Africans. So you know a lot about poetry and music, isn't it? This poem is written what life is really like. It's written in 3 verse, meaning it does not follow a regular meter. The lines vary, they differ. The word there vary, meaning they differ in length and do not adhere to a strict pattern, allowing the poet to focus on content and emotion. Here, we're not looking so much onto the beat and the rhythm and the beating up, but on the content and the emotions. Grade 12 learners, let's look at imagery. What is imagery? Imagery is words that we use that create pictures in your mind. We use words in a certain way that creates some form of pictures in your mind. The drip from my bulldozed chest. We have a drip. You know what a drip is? Think hospital. Think that line that is put in you to give you sustenance in your body, medication through a drip, not the shoes, the drip. From where? From my bulldozed chest. When you think bulldozed, what do you think? Building, isn't it? You're thinking caterpillar, isn't it? You're thinking a big, huge monster of a machine moving in the township or in a town and bulldozing things, moving building material or a building of. But now we're speaking of what? Of a bulldozed chest. We'll talk further about this later. This line creates a vivid image of physical and emotional pain. You've got a chest, your chest is fragile, isn't it? Your chest is weak sometimes. But now think of this bulldozer coming in and coming to you, bulldozing it, removing all the gravel in the street. On your poor chest. So there is an image of physical pain. We already have the physical pain there. The fragility is moved on. And you see what? You receive emotional pain. We're dealing with 2 things here. Emotional pain from your chest and your physical pain from your chest. Using the metaphor, the comparison there of a bulldozed chest to convey a sense of destruction and hurt. If we want to remove this old house so that we can put a new one, how do we remove it? Brick by brick? No. We bring in a bulldozer to remove all that. And we see destruction and falling of bricks of mortar all around. And if you are near it, you're going to choke with the dust and you are going to feel the pain. If it's your house being bulldozed or removed, you'll certainly have tears flowing. You will have tears coming down your eyes. So think about life, the drip in the hospital, the bulldozed chest, that fragile chest now. There's a big caterpillar coming, machinery, removing it. Good. And then what remains? Your emotions and physical pain. Will also focus on the sound and the language. The repetition of the same starting with, which is called what? Alliteration. Those are parts of poetry. That's what we study in poetry. For an example, in our poem, what life is really like does not heavily rely on alliteration, but there are subtle instances where you find alliteration, like in this example of a sentence, met with terror from a roaming hawk. Met with terror from a roaming hawk, that repetition of the R sound. Key parts of poetry focuses also on what? On assonances. What are assonances? Assonances are repetition of vowel sounds. You know vowel sounds, isn't it? Your A, E, O, U. So that's the repetition of the vowel sounds. Let's look for an example in your poem. Life is not a fairy tale. At the battlefield, the repetition of the A sound in fairy and tale creates subtle musical quality. Life is not a fairy tale, it's a battlefield. So can you feel the sound there, the subtle musical quality of the fairy and the tale? Can you see? Can you hear that? Yes. Those are assonances. And onomatopoeia. Words that sound like their meaning. Example, this poem does not prominently feature onomatopoeia, but it uses vivid language to evoke sensory experiences. In other poems, we'll have onomatopoeia, but in this poem, we do not have. Another part of poetry or key part would be form. Poems come in different shapes and sizes. We have sonnets. But this one, as an example, we already explained that it's a free verse poem, meaning, again, it does not have or it doesn't follow a specific rhyme scheme or meter. Three verse. It allows the poet, to express thoughts and emotions freely without being constrained by traditional structures. That it must have an A, B, B, A, or B, 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 A. You know the rhythm that you study at school with other poems, isn't it? One question that you would ask, why do people write poetry? I hope there are budding poems in all the classes that are listening in this afternoon. Yes. Deboho, you are one of them, isn't it? Tyron, you are one of them. Kokeso, yes. We have budding poets in all the classes in Gauteng. And one day, we will be studying your poem. express emotions. People write poetry because they want to express some form of feelings. They want to share with us feelings like happiness, sadness, or love. Sadness. Where do broken hearts go? You know the song, ne? Okay. Or love. Or happiness. Remember, poetry is almost very closely related to music. What life is really like expresses the poet's feelings about the harsh realities of life. This is not a pleasant or a happy poem, but it's a harsh poem. And the poet is called upon to have strength and to endure the harsh realities of life, what life is really like. Life is not a fairy tale, but it is what? It's a battlefield. Some people write poetry to tell stories in a beautiful and memorable way. An example of that is the poem tells the story of a personal journey through life's challenges using vivid imagery and emotional language. We can also reflect culture of different places and times when we write our poem. And mostly, poems are universal. It's a universal experience of facing life's difficulties. Someone living in Australia, someone living in UAE, when they read a poem, they will identify because it does have what? A universal meaning or universal experience. We all face life's difficulties, isn't it? So it resonates. This resonates with readers from various backgrounds. Wherever you are in the universe, you go through harsh realities of life. This poem explores the harsh realities of life and the lessons learned through difficult experiences. Our poet this afternoon, Beverly Rycroft, a South African poet known for her reflective and poignant writing. Her writing is reflective. She thinks deeply about certain situations. Now I'm going to read the poem to you. I hope you have the poem on your desk. Yes. Let's read together. 12A, 12C. Yes. Let's read together. You need to toughen up. My father would complain when I was small. I ought to take you to see chickens having their heads chopped off. That teach you what life is really like. He'd seek me out when one of his pigeons crashed for home or met with terror from a roaming hawk. Would tumble into the loft, mutilated by wire or beak. I was the one made to clench my palms round its pumping chest to keep it still, while my father's hairy fingers stitched its garroted throat angrily to rise again. You see, life is a fight for survival. He'd shout, forgetting he was not lecturing his students or giving his inaugural address. You got to roll with the punches. I waited and waited for that roughness to spy me and settle into land years and years of flinching anticipation until the day I came from hospital and my father dressed my wound. Easing with practiced hands the drape from my bulldozed chest, he renewed the plaster in breathing silence, never speaking, never once saying, "Life's a bastard. Toughen up." Sad, isn't it, boys and girls? Let's look at the analysis of the first stanza. You need to toughen up. My father would complain. When I was small, I ought to take you to see chickens having their heads chopped off. Harsh, isn't it? The father expected Beverly to do what? To toughen up, to be strong. And my father would complain that I must take you to see chickens having their heads cut off, chopped off. Can you see the knife going onto the chicken's head? The blood splintering on the chicken. Gory images there. The father's harsh advice to toughen up would always tell the little girl to do what? To toughen up, to be strong. There is an imagery of chickens being beheaded, cut off. Illustrate that life is not a fairy tale again, but there is a form of brutality. The chickens having their heads chopped off creates a vivid and shocking visual image. Can you see the chicken? Can you see the blood splattering all over? And Beverly holding the chicken, and to the father with a knife cutting off the head. Gory, shocking, vivid. Let's proceed to lines 7 to 12. That, my girl, that teach you what life is really like. He'd stick me. He'd look for me. When one of his pigeons, crazed for home, met with terror from a roaming hawk. This family had some pigeons, and the pigeons were roaming. They were going off, flying all over, and one of them would come home terrified because a hawk would be wanting to kill it. What is the father trying to do here? The father is trying to teach his daughter resilience through witnessing the terror of a pigeon using vivid imagery, met with terror from a roaming hawk. Uses auditory image to convey the panic and fear of the pigeon. The hawk was chased by what? The pigeon was chased by what? By a hawk. So what does it do now? It flies back home, and it's terrifying. Let's continue and look at lines 13 to 18. The text. He holds it. The father will hold the pigeon. And what will happen to the girl child, Beverly, while I stitched its wounds. Ooh, with needle and thread. You know the needle and the thread? The pigeon would tumble into the coop. I'd feel that I have stitched the pigeon to life. The act of stitching the pigeon's wound symbolizes learning to deal with what? With the pain and suffering. And that's what the father wants the daughter to learn. That we have a pigeon that was bitten by a hawk and it races home and it is bleeding and there's a wound gaping. So what must happen to that pigeon? The father will hold the pigeon and will instruct the daughter to do it, to stitch it. There will be stitching the wound, putting that wound into place. And Beverly would be so proud of herself that the pigeon will fly out or will just land in the coop and it will be nursed to health. What do we see there? The tactile imagery. What is tactile? Sense of touch. The touching of the pigeon. It's making Beverly to see and handle the pain with needle and thread. And this helps us as readers to do what? To feel the delicate and the painful process. In lines 19 to 14, let's read at the text. But now, the drip from my bulldozed chest reminds me of the lessons he tried to teach, and I understand. We have two periods here. One, when Beverly was a little girl, or when the poet was a little girl, and now she's an adult. And as an adult, she's going through a rough patch of being sick. She's suffering from cancer. She looks back and says, my father taught me to do what? To handle pain. As my father wanted to prepare me for the harsh life that we are leading now. And as I look back to those moments when I stitched the pigeon with needle and thread back to life, and here I am now. My chest is bulldozed. I have a wound, emotional and physical, and I understand what my father was trying to do what? To teach me. The speaker reflects on her own suffering. She's suffering from cancer. And the lessons her father tried to impart using the metaphor of a bulldozed chest. This metaphor creates a powerful visual seeing and also tactile image, the touching. You see and you touch. The image of deep emotional and physical pain. After we have read our poem and having understood the imagery and the line-by-line analysis. There's something that we need to do after we have enjoyed or we have shed a tear. I'm sure some of you are teary-eyed with that gory image of the threading. And some of you have a smile on your face because the pigeon is nursed to health. And some of you are teary-eyed, of course, that this poor woman is suffering from cancer. The end result is we need to sit for an exam. One question that you will be asked in an exam, it's setting. When you are asked about setting, what do you need to think of? You need to think of time. You need to think of place. Time and place. Time, when. Place, where. We're not talking of the actual clock time, not 7 o'clock, not 8 o'clock, but the time in this question is linked to an event. And the big question is, what is happening now? What happened before? What will happen directly after? I know, boys and girls, when it comes to place, we all get our 1 mark right, but we struggle with time. As you do your revision for the upcoming exam, kindly look at various poems, check if the setting is evident, or you go to your Macbeth. Normally people who do poetry couple it with Macbeth or with Cry the Beloved Country. Some do short stories, but do check in all the papers, in all the genres, you will see. Describe the setting of the extract or describe the setting of stanza 2 or of stanza 1 in the following poem. So what do you need to think of? You need to think of place as well as time, the when as well as the where. In previous exams, the question came out as describe the setting. But in the previous exam, 2024, it came out as describe the time and place. So the examiners were very specific. And your focus should be not on the actual time. Let's look at the question. Let's look at stanza 2. Describe the time and place where stanza 2 is set. When you are asked to describe the time and place, you need to do the following. Go to the poem and look for what? For clues in the text that indicate the time. Here it says, when I was small. That will be the time, right? When I was small. This happened when? When the poet was small. And the place? Near the pigeon's coop. What is that? That's your place. This happened when? When I was small. That's your time. Place? Near the pigeon's coop. How do we explain this for your 2 marks? You focus on the setting in stanza 2 where the father seeks out the speaker. Remember, seeking out, finding. Where's my daughter? Come, 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 come. During a specific event involving a pigeon, a specific event. What is that specific event? When the pigeon was coming home in mad terror from the chase with the hawk. The time is likely during the speaker's childhood. How do we know that? When I was small. And the place is near the pigeon's coop. Right. And for that, you get your 2 marks. The second set of questions will be sound devices. We're doing poetry, isn't it? So sound is big in poetry. So you need to know the sound devices. You are going to be asked to identify sound devices. Not only identify them, but do what? Explain their use. In lines 11 to 13, what do we see? 11 to 13 or 12 to 13, it will be met with terror from a roaming hawk. A roaming hawk. We see what? An example of alliteration. And then remember what we said about alliteration is the repetition of the same consonant sound. So, what you're going to do now, you are going to give us the answer S. You're identifying the sound device, it will be alliteration, and then you furthermore expected to give an explanation. An explanation would be the alliteration in met with terror from a roaming hawk and its effect on the poem. The repetition of the R sound emphasizes the repetition. Your answer should be the repetition of the R sound emphasizes the intensity of the pigeon's fear. What does it tell you? That there is imminent fear, there is imminent danger, and the pigeon is flying over to find safety. Okay? Yes. We're not only looking at the sound devices, but also of tone. You will be asked to determine the tone or to identify the emotional quality of the text. In the exam, we will ask you, refer to lines 1 to 2. Let's read lines 1 to 2, and every time, boys and girls, you are asked to refer to certain lines, you go back and read that lines. You read, you must read. Read, and we're going to read again, and then make sense of what we're reading, and then respond to the questions. You need to toughen up. My father would complain. What's the tone? Can you feel the emotional quality of this test? It's not going to say you need to toughen up. You need to toughen up. My father would complain. Identify the tone the father would use in these lines. Very serious kind of tone, isn't it? And that will earn you a mark. Furthermore, you will be required to do what? To explain to us why would the father use this particular tone in the line, you need to toughen up. The father's words are meant to teach a tough lesson. About what? About life. Which makes the tone very serious. Life is not a fairy tale. It is what? A battlefield. It's not, life is not a fairy tale, it's a battlefield. Toughen up. Life a battlefield. So there is some serious warning there. And that's it. In an exam, Peter, you will be asked to identify the tone and explain why it is used. Let's look at lines 25 to 29. Each time we refer you to the lines, what happens, boys and girls? You go back to the lines and you read. You see, life is a fight. Life is a fight for survival. You see, life is a fight for survival, he'd shout. Forgetting he was not lecturing his students or giving his inaugural address. You got to roll with the punches. I'm sure that's the tone that the father used. It's not a game. It's not a fairy tale. Girl. You got to roll with the punches. Now you will be asked to identify the emotional quality of the text. This time, the tone is serious. The tone is cautionary. That is, it is giving warning. You are warned that, you see, life is a fight. And it's a fight for what? It's a fight for survival. As you read the question paper, as you read the poem in an exam, I want you to focus on your emotions on the paper and the poem and to look at the questions. What is it that you are asked? You are asked to do certain things. And what are those things? Let's look at the explanation there. The seriousness of the tone underscores the gravity of the lesson the father is trying to impact or to impart. He's not telling stories. He's not about stories. He's about warning. Hey, man up. You are a girl, but you go to man up. He wants his child to understand that life is not easy and it requires strength and endurance and perseverance. This serious tone is consistent with the father's overall approach to teaching his child about the realities of life. After you have answered your questions on tone and on setting, we're going to move to a new set of questions that is of figures of speech. We have a methodology that we want you to use to be able to ace figures of speech in an exam. We want you to use the ID method. Firstly, you are going to be asked to identify the figure of speech, and that is for 1 mark. Then the B part of the question will be 2 marks. And for those 2 marks, what are you required to do? You are going to describe the figure of speech for the D. Then you are going to do the E, the explanation of the figure of speech. Here, 2 things are being compared. And when we ask you to compare or to identify this figure of speech or to tell us the relevance of the figure of speech, we want you to be very specific. We don't want you to tell us what simile is or metaphor is. We know you know the definition of a metaphor, definition, but we want you to apply what you know and explain and describe the two things that are being compared. That's very important. That's very key. We want you, firstly, we want you to identify. Secondly, we want you to describe. That is, now you apply the knowledge that you got. You know what a stimuli is? A stimuli is when you compare two things and you're using the like. How are you going to identify the figure of speech? When we compare two things and then we use the like and the as. If it's a metaphor, what do you use? Is implied. So now we want you to break, to show us that you know. Now you explain why the poet or the author, in case of your novel, in case of your drama, in case of your short story. But our focus this afternoon is what? Is poetry. Why the poet has used that particular figure of speech. Let's look at lines 18. The drip. Hospital. From my bulldozed chest. Identify the figure of speech in this line. Can you see the transition from the warning, from the cautionary, what say life is, but now it's the trip from my bulldozed chest. Identify the figure of speech in this line. That's the A part. Number 2, why the figure of speech is relevant in this poem. For the first part is 1 mark. For the second part would be 2 marks. What is bulldozing? The literal, the real meaning, the actual. When you speak literal, we refer to actual, real meaning, or dictionary meaning of a word. To bulldoze something means to knock it down or flatten it. Can you feel the image? The words there are heavy. To bulldoze, to knock down, to flatten. Using what? Using a bulldozer or a powerful machine used in construction and demolition. Remember the image that I gave of a house? You want to build a new house and we have this smaller house that you want to flatten out, that you want to demolish. And this smaller house would be like that chest, that fragile. And then you come with what? Big machine. And you remove, you flatten the construction. So, the first part, identification of the figure of speech, it will be the drape from my bulldozed chest will be your metaphor. The idea. Now, you describe the description. You are comparing the chest, a fragile chest, to something that has been bulldozed. The poet emphasizes the intensity and severity the speaker's experience, effectively illustrates the depth of the speaker's pain. She's feeling pain, isn't it? She has a drip hanging down, and her chest is weak, and she feels that the chest is under severe pain. It's under construction. It's going to be demolished. The use of the word bulldozed highlights the brutal and relentless of the pain. Remember, this poor woman is suffering from cancer. suggesting it is not just a minor discomfort. If you have a little pain on your finger, but this time it's something going on in her body, and that's emotional and that's physical, and has a profound and devastating experience. This helps the reader to understand the extent of the speaker's suffering on both an emotional and physical level. You heard me, Samuel? Good. You need to be present when you write your exam. Paper 2. Whilst you are writing and scoring marks, enjoy the emotional ride. Right? And I know you've prepared. You're ready. I know you. State of mind. This is a new set of questions that you're going to be expected to deal with in the upcoming exam. Refers to a person's emotional and mental condition. Think of head. Think of heart. You feel, you think. Mental, emotional. Right? When you answer on state of mind. So you will be dealing with your mood, feelings, thoughts, as well as attitudes, which can influence the behavior and reactions to particular situations. Attitudes refers to a person's outlook or perspective on life and specific situations. A positive state of mind might involve hopeful and confident attitude. Is the father hopeful? The father is serious state of mind, cautionary, warning. The mental condition, he puts her daughter in a state where she is ready to handle the harsh realities of life. Mental condition. In the exam, we're going to ask you to do the following. We're going to ask you to discuss the state of mind of the speaker. In this instance, is in lines 30 to 35. I waited and waited for that bitter roughness to spy and circle in to land. Yes and yes of flinching anticipation until the day I came from hospital. Remember, in all these years, when she was trained that life is not a fairy tale, she kept on thinking and waiting and waited that one day, there will be some form of roughness coming, spying on me, landing on my plate in my life. I waited for years until today. I am out of the hospital. I'm from the hospital and I'm sick. I'm sick of cancer. My bulldozed chest. Substantiate your answer. Did you hear the state of mind there? I waited and I waited for that bitter roughness to spy and circle into land, years and years of flinching anticipation until the day I come from hospital. we want you to discuss the poet's state of mind. The poet or the speaker is reflective. And now she has an understanding of all the waiting that she has done. And we see how she uses the lowercase I, that she is diminutive, that the pain has overtaken her, that she's in a state. So we say that she is reflecting and she's also understanding. She recalls her father's lessons. She has come to understand and appreciate the harsh lessons taught by her father. She now appreciates. Earlier on, when she cut or she saw the beheaded chicken's head, and when she stitched the pigeon back to health, she didn't understand that one day, after the waiting and the years, she would be going home from the hospital. A further question, exam question, the character of the speaker. What does this poem reveal about the character of the speakers in lines 18 to 24? Let's see lines 18 to 24. I was the one made to clench my palms round its pumping chest. Remember, the chicken is pumping. Pump, pump, pump. And what happens? The speaker had to clench her palms around it, while the father did what? Stitched with his hairy fingers the throat and angrily to rise again. Here, the explanation is the speaker is resilient. She is strong. She can endure the harshness and she reflects back. She looks back to having learned to understand and cope with life's hardships. Her ability to stitch the pigeon's wounds and later reflect on her father's lesson shows her growth and strength, her ability to take the pain, her ability to endure, her strength to take the pain. That's what she's doing. Boys and girls, 12A, 12D. The next set of questions that you're going to deal with in the exam is irony. What is irony? When a person says something that differs from what they or we expect them to say. When a person does something that differs from what they do or we expect them to do. In short, you say something, but you mean something else. Remember how you arrived late in Miss Peterson's class or Miss Mtimkulu's class? And she looked at you and said, "Wow, welcome, early bird." But you are 30 minutes late. There's an irony, isn't it? It's like the teacher is giving you a compliment for arriving early, yet you came late. So there's an irony. in simple terms. Now we are going to ask you to identify and explain irony in the lines. In lines 27 to 29, I'm reading lines 27 to 29. He was not lecturing his students or giving his inaugural address. You got to roll with the punches. These lines are ironic because the father is speaking to his child as if he were addressing a formal audience, such as students and attendees at an inaugural address. This formal and authoritative tone is out of place, isn't it? Out of place in a personal and intimate conversation with a child. I'm sure when I stand in class and say, yay, Peter, Tom, people, you must roll. You got to roll with the punches. But I'm sure if I was talking to my daughter or my son, would say, you need to work very hard. This time, you got to roll with the punches. The irony is that the father forgets he is not in a formal setting, yet he delivers his advice with the same seriousness and formality. Can you see the irony? You would be softer when you're giving a lecture, not a lecture, advice to your child. But this time, he is using formal words and strong advice. So there's the irony there. This contrast highlights the father's intense and somewhat inappropriate approach to teaching life lessons, making the situation both unexpected and striking. Let's look at theme questions. The message. Theme, the message. Theme is a theme of work is an underlying message or big idea. What is the underlying message of our poem this afternoon? Our theme or our message should be timeless as well as universal. One of the themes in this poem is what? The harsh realities of life. Boys and girls, how do you tackle themes or tell us about themes in an exam? You are going to employ or use what we call a pill method. And when you use the pill method, we expect you to give the first thing to give us the poem. So you are going to say what life really is, what life is really like is the harsh realities of life. That's the point that you're making. What we expect from you with the first E is evidence from the poem. This theme is evident in line 1 to 6, where the father tells the speaker, you need to toughen up. My father would complain, when I was small, I ought to take you to see chickens having their heads chopped off. So there's harsh realities of life. You give us evidence from where? From the passage. Evidence would be example from the poem. Then the second E is the explanation. The father's advice to toughen up and his graphic description of chickens being beheaded illustrate the brutal and the unfiltered nature of life. This imagery serves to prepare the speaker to the inevitable hardships they will face. The father's lessons are harsh, but intended to instill resilience and realistic understanding of the world. You can give us examples of situations where the child was called up to see the harsh realities of life, that seeing the chickens being beheaded, nesting, or using the needle and the thread on the pigeon, nesting it back or stitching it back to life. So the link would be this theme is reinforced through the poem as the speaker reflects on the lessons learned from her father, highlighting the continuous struggle and the need for resilience in the face of life's challenges. The second theme that we study in, or that is evident in our poem this afternoon is resilience and learning from suffering. The girl has learned from suffering, isn't it? Makes a point. She has learned from learning. She has learned resilience and learning from suffering. Evidence from the poem that will be in lines 19 to 14. So you go back to the poem and you check an example. You give us an example. And what is the example? When the father's finger stitched the throat angrily to rise again. The explanation, the act of holding the injured pigeon while her father stitches its wound symbolizes the speaker's forced confrontation with pain and suffering. This experience teaches the speakers to endure and manage difficult situations. The father's actions, though seemingly harsh, are meant to build resilience and strength in who? In the daughter. And at the end, it culminates where the speaker is going through her own suffering and she looks back at the lessons that she learned. Last questions that you get in your question paper would be open-ended questions where you refer to the whole poem, and they will say refer to the whole poem, and they would ask you to discuss your view. When we ask you to discuss your view, you either agree or disagree with the point or the statement made. In essence, we're asking you, what do you think? We never say, what do you think? We never ask you directly, is this statement true? But the question would be, discuss your view. And when you see, discuss your view, you, in your head, think whether this statement is true or not. Think, what do you think? So you're either going to say you agree or disagree, or yes or no to the statement. But you not only do that, you give reasons for your answer, for the judgment or for the stance that you have taken. You take a stance. We call that open-ended questions. And we normally want you to use your own words without restriction. And you're giving us a relevant response that shows us that you understand the poem. We want to see how you understand the poem, or the short story, or the drama, or the novel, depending on what genre you are answering at that point. And remember, you use the pill method that I have explained earlier. You're making a point. That is, you state your argument or your point. Then you give evidence. You provide evidence. And where do you get the evidence? From the text. Be it a poem, be it short stories, be it drama, and be it novel. So when you do open-ended questions, think Peel method, think you must provide. Provide what? Evidence. The evidence will be example. And those examples are from where? From the text. Furthermore, after you have given us a point, you have given us an example, you must explain how the evidence supports your point. You must still explain to us how this evidence that you have given supports the point that you have made in number 1. And lastly, what do? You link back whatever you have written here, your point, your evidence, your explanation, back to the next point or to the main idea. Let's look at an example of an open-ended question. Is the title, What Life is Really Like, suitable for this poem? Discuss your view. Yes, this way. The title is suitable. Okay, let's hear you. You must give us a point. What is your point? The title, What Life is Really Like, is suitable for the poem as it accurately reflects its content and themes. Yes. Evidence from the poem. The poem begins with the father's blunt advice. What is the blunt advice? You need to toughen up. And it continues to give us a various harsh lessons about life, which is witnessing the beheading of the chickens and the terror of a pigeon attacked by a hawk. Evidence, isn't it? You've given us evidence. Now you must explain how the evidence supports your point. These experiences of witnessing the beheading of the chickens, this experience of seeing the terror of a pigeon attacked by a hawk, illustrates the universal truth about what? Life's brutality and the necessity of resilience or endurance. This is emphasizing the kind of fairness, but one must learn to cope with what? With challenges. Linking it back to the point, this sets the tone for the poem, preparing the reader for the stark and realistic portrayal of life's difficulties that follows. Tumisho, you say, no. I don't agree that the title is suitable. It is not suitable because, yes, Tando, it is not suitable because the title is not suitable because it suggests a comprehensive depiction of life, while the poem focuses narrowly on the harsh lessons taught by the father. It is just narrow. That is handling of pigeons, the brutality and survival, rather than a balanced view of life. So I don't agree. The poem's portrayal of life is skewed, it's not general hardships and suffering. The father's lessons are intense and traumatic, emphasizing survival and resilience. This narrow focus does not encompass the full spectrum of life experiences, because life's experiences are not devoid of joy, love, or growth. much as we have the pain, to have a balance, what do we have? We have the joys, we have the love, we have the growth. And together with that, we have what? We have hardships. So I do not agree. That's Tando's viewpoint. I don't agree that the title is suitable, that what life is really like. Life is not just pain. Life has joy. Linking it back to the poem, Tando says, what life is really like is misleading. A more fitting title would reflect the poem's emphasis on the harsh realities and survival aspects of life, rather than suggesting a complete representation of life's varied experiences. In short, the poem reflects on the poet's childhood's experiences with her father, who believed in teaching her the harsh realities of life through tough lessons. He would show her the brutal side of nature and make her assist in caring for injured animals, emphasizing that life is a constant struggle for survival. This experience has left a lasting impact on her, shaping her understanding of resilience and strength. The poem concludes with a poignant moment where her father, in silence, turns to her own words, highlighting the unspoken bond and lessons learned. At the end, the father is no longer harsh. Remember, his beloved daughter is sick and he has to nurse her back to health. Boys and girls, as we reflect back on the poem, as a last thought, let's remember that life often presents us with challenges and hardships. It is not about avoiding these difficulties, but learning how to face them with resilience and strength. Just as the poet's father taught her to toughen up, we too, boys and girls, can find ways to grow stronger through our experiences, isn't it? Yes. With the matric exams just around the corner, this is a perfect opportunity to apply this lesson. Embrace the challenges ahead. Prepare diligently. Remember that every obstacle you overcome is a step towards building your inner strength and achieving your goals. Good luck to all of you. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please remember, embrace the challenges ahead. Prepare diligently. And remember that every obstacle you overcome is a step towards building your inner strength and achieving your goals. Thank you.